Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Daryl Urbanski, your host as always. And today we're joined by Coach Kevin Voisin. And Kevin is the embodiment of powerfully imperfect. He's a mindset coach, speaker, and the head coach and COO at apogee.strong.com, a movement built on one belief: mediocre isn't an option. Kevin's life work is mentorship, real, raw, results driven. He helps men, women, and families build unshakable mindsets, rise through adversity, and create legendary lives across faith, family, finance, fitness, and fun. No fluff and no excuses, just clarity and chaos, strength under pressure, and action changing lives. I've asked him to join us here today to share his story and insights into building people and legacies that last. So, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing, my friend?
Thank you for having me. Super excited to be here, and I feel great, man. I feel
Yeah.
really, really good. I even had a bunch of medical tests done yesterday, went to the doctor and reviewed them, and I'm killing it. They're like, "Hey, you're moving everything the right direction. Everything looks great." And so I think in the first time in my life, I'm at the doctor and everything's awesome. So it's a good day, man.
That is a good day. That is health is wealth. I just have a buddy, him and I were having a talk. We're like, health is wealth, and then wealth is wealth. But if you don't have the health, the wealth is pointless.
Look at how fast someone who's amassed millions will spend millions to stay alive at the end of their life, right? Like
Oh
you
yeah,
amass all this wealth, and then at the end, it's like, oh, you'll just give it all away for what? For like another day, another month, for sure. I mean, if you don't have your health, you don't have much.
yeah, 100%. And we just went through. I feel like it hasn't been talked about enough, but nobody's really talked about the change in the food pyramid. They literally flipped it upside down.
Mm.
There was like this funny meme going on, but it's true. I sat down with my parents. My parents are in their 70s, and pointed out and looked at it. I was like, that means that for 60 something years, the government's been pushing people towards disease, sickness, and death as part of like food programs, military ration programs, like the whole medical system, what they feed people in hospitals, what's allowed, not allowed. This is nonsense. It's completely
We
backwards.
we flipped the food pyramid to say what's best for the human beings consuming it, not for the human beings selling it
Yeah,
to the
yeah,
people who are consuming it, right? Like it just makes so much more sense now. And it's anybody who's put any effort into their health at all over the last 30 years, this food pyramid, like, oh yeah, that works,
yeah.
right?
That works.
Nobody else would be like, yeah, eat 8 servings of bread a day. You're gonna be awesome.
Yeah,
Like this is crazy.
yeah. It's nonsense, and it's not like there was any new discoveries. We didn't learn anything. There wasn't a new study. So, anyways, so I think it's important that we talk about some of the real stuff going on. And before we hop into your work, how did you even get started in this and in entrepreneurship? Do you come from a family of entrepreneurs? Is it fair?
Yes, I am an eighth generation, which, if you're from the United States, is a long time. I realize that there's a lot of other countries that 8 generations is not that long, but in the United States, it's pretty rare to find someone who's done anything for that many generations. I was an eighth generation oysterman from South Louisiana. My ancestors, right, they tried to go to Canada, where yours are from, but actually, in the journey across from France to Canada, the government changed hands. So Canada flipped from French to English in that moment, as they were taking the journey. And when they got there, the English government was like, "Hey, you're gonna swear fealty to us." And my ancestors were like, "Nope, like we wouldn't swear fealty to churches. That's why we're coming here. We're not swearing fealty to you." So the English separated them onto different boats and sent them to Louisiana. And so my ancestors all arrived in Louisiana. They tried to be Canadian, but they just didn't take. And that's why our pronunciations of things are so weird. But yeah, but immediately they started to live off of the land in Louisiana. Louisiana it's awesome. I love it. I love Louisiana. I love the culture. I love the swamps. I love the hurricanes. I love the gators. I love everything about it. But it's a pretty inhospitable place. Most of the people who landed, if you lived and grew up in the swamps of Louisiana, it's probably because you didn't have a better option. You ended up there because there was nowhere else for you. And so our people became really resilient. They lived off the land. You were never going to starve. There's food everywhere, there's bounty of seafood, etc. And it created a really freedom-minded entrepreneurial culture, which with hurricanes, everything could go away at any moment. So it also created like a grateful, happy, strong community, right? Like everybody knew it didn't matter how big your house was, the hurricane could probably knock it over. People really bonded together tight. And my whole family has been in seafood forever. I actually started my career in the seafood industry, building global brands around oysters. And we had a 30,000-acre oyster farm. And how that leads to coaching is a wild and crazy story. But the truth is, I really believe most of us, who we really are, doesn't change a whole lot. We get better at like polishing it. We get better at taking kind of the crap off the top of it. But I've really always been a coach, forward and backwards. It just took me a while in my life to kind of find that. But I've been part of an entrepreneurial family forever, since I was born. I grew up on an oyster boat. Literally, after I was born, they would bring me on the boat while they worked. And instead of a nook or the pacifier, they would just shuck a really big oyster, and I would just suck on an oyster. I guess like to put it right into me, like this is the path, right? By the eighth generation, it's kind of manifest destiny. Hey, I was
Um,
good at it. I loved it. I thank God every day for my dad and my grandpa who taught me to be entrepreneurial, who taught me to create solutions, be solution minded, not problem minded.
I love that. 8 generations of oysters.
Yeah, crazy. And then I left, right? Which I think is kind of winning in the oyster game. I love the oyster game. I love the people in the industry, but after a while we just kind of topped out the game. We were the biggest global brand and company, and it was time for me to try bigger marketing. Let's market something that, doesn't grow underwater. And yeah, the rest is kind of history for me.
Yeah, no, but I mean, there's just such. I mean, you talk about one of my favorite quotes about mastery and discipline is do it until it becomes dull and then keep going until it's beautiful. So just like
Yeah.
8 generations in oysters, like you have ferreted out every nook and cranny, every test, everything that can be done. And that's super powerful because that translates. It's like you see someone that wins an Olympic medal in one sport, they typically do well in other sports, even if it's not in their wheelhouse, so to speak, because they understand those principles and what it took and what the 80/20 is, so to speak. So what were some of the greatest kind of challenges in your business career?
So let's go back to oysters, and then I'll tell you kind of where I transitioned. I ended up being a public official for a brief time. Realized that being a public official and having a young family was, I got to pick one or the other. I wasn't going to get to have both. So I ran, I won, and then I never reran because I wanted to really focus on my family. But when we were in the industry, so the oyster industry in South Louisiana in particular, there was this virus. It's like actually a bacteria called Vibrio vulnificus. And a certain group of people, like if you have cirrhosis, if you have other medical conditions like late stage diabetes, if you eat the product and that bacteria is present, you can get really sick. In fact, like people die every year from this, right? And this was a huge issue. And I watched the whole industry just suffer. It made the product really inexpensive. It made people really say, well, hey, this is maybe dangerous. This is where the old adage, right? Like, don't only eat oysters in the months that end in an R, which I
Mm,
still think is great because they just taste better. By the way, if there's no R in the month, your oyster's not going to taste as good unless it's from the Pacific Northwest. That's fine. It's cold all the time there, so that's fine. But yeah, so when I first got there, it was really like this barrage of, oh, this is going to kill us,
mm,
right? And what I realized as I was marketing is like, well, or we could become the solution, and this could propel us forward, right? And
mhm,
what seems like a wave that's going to crash on you and destroy you, if you kind of get out ahead of it, you can kind of ride the wave, and then
mhm,
and then it's not so scary anymore. If you just accept, okay, we have this problem, how do we fix it? So we used a whole lot. I mean, we spent a ton of resources, a ton of time, a ton of energy in figuring out how to track product, I mean, we knew any particular oyster that we sold. We knew what boat it was fished on, what day it was fished on, who were the deckhands on that boat, who were the people in the plant that touched that product, and then who was the truck driver who got it all the way to the client. Once it got to the restaurant, we didn't know anymore. But we had a chain of custody on something that weighs a third of a pound. I mean,
wow.
we sold 75 million oysters a year, right? 25 million pounds. And we knew that chain. That was fun. Right. It wasn't fun when we didn't know. When it first all started, it wasn't fun at all. But once you could track it, it's like, oh, cool. And then we invented a process that completely killed the bacteria, right? And got out ahead. We got so far out ahead of the regulators that actually the FDA set up an office in our plant to study what we were doing. So they're like, wow, this is really working. Like, you're killing the bacteria. How do you do this? Right. And so that got fun. Like, instead of being scared of the FDA, suddenly they had an office in our plant. And guess what happens when they do that? Is you have an agreement of like, hey, if something's out of line for 5 minutes, you get to tell us about it. Don't just shut us down because we're building this together, right? Yeah, we're building this together. So it was just, you start to realize that when you see this crushing thing, it also is a wave of opportunity. And again, being from South Louisiana, storms. I mean, I was a Hurricane Katrina survivor. I mean, just like right there. I mean, Hurricane Katrina, the eye of that storm passed over my house. 2,000 homes south of me and 200,000 homes north of me were destroyed. It sucked a little dry air right over my town, And so there's like this little homo which is kind of spared, but everything north and south of it was just devastated by the storm. And so you're like, wow, this is horrible. And it was. But then there's this whole rebirth that comes on the backside because people stand up again and people rebuild. And so I think for me, the early part of my career was about looking at a disaster as danger and opportunity, right? I think that the Chinese symbol for disaster is danger, and it's the symbol for danger and the symbol for opportunity, right? And it really is true. When I was in that period, like Hurricane Katrina, I did a lot of interviews for French television because I speak French fluently. I lived in France for a couple of years, and they just had someone who could speak French that they could understand. And the number one question people would ask me is, well, is this going to destroy the culture of Louisiana and New Orleans? And
No.
no, that's what created it. Like that's what creates the culture is that we know this could happen. And I think it's the same thing in business for entrepreneurs. So just to bring this back, the boom and bust cycle, whether that be industry wide, whether that be in your own business, whether that be in a particular department, is just baked in. Like you're in the capitalist system. So there's going to be big booms and there's going to be busts. You define who you are with how you ride and respond to those. It's
Mhm.
not that those things create who you are, right?
Mhm.
Your business running out of money is okay. It's a business running out of money. It happens every day. Like some of the biggest business, how many times did Musk run out
And
of money?
and Enron posted like $100 billion of profit 12 months before they filed for bankruptcy.
Right. And then they were gone. But see, notice what you learned with Enron is something about the founder and CEOs, right? Or the board. They were crap. Why? Because when it rocketed down, it was gone.
Yeah.
If you look at like Elon Musk or any of the big guys, Amazon, whatever, don't care. They went way up and then they all crashed because every business does this. Like I think that a lot of business owners think, well, man, we're killing it. We got our first 20 orders. We hit our first million. You're like, "Oh, we hit our first million this year." And it just always feels like right then is when the biggest client cancels or like some new regulation comes out. So in that first bust is when we find out who you really are as a founder, as a
Mhm.
CEO, and as a company.
Mhm.
And you will not find, there's so many people these days that want to talk about billionaire, right? When I grew up, it was like try to be a millionaire, but of course we skipped to billion. You will not find a billionaire who wasn't at some point in his life backwards hundreds of millions, right? So if you want to be, oh, I want to be a billionaire. So do you want to owe two, three, $400 million and not know where to get it? Because every one of those guys, and I've coached several one-on-one, but every one of them, when you look at them, at some point, in order to hit that billion, we're backwards are very much risking one, two, three, four, $500 million. Do you really want that? Because that they come together,
Yeah.
right? They come
Yeah.
together. And
Yeah.
so as a business person, don't look at the crash as like something you did wrong. It's just that welcome to the game.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, no, the problem is the gift, it's the opportunity. And I always say everyone's easy to get along with and your friend when the sun is shining and there's food in their belly and some money in their pocket. But who are they when it's cold and wet and they're tired and they want to go home and they're hungry and they're broke? And that's I have a thing where I don't really trust people till we've gone through something like that. Like everybody in my mind, it's almost like a bullseye. Like I got, my nuclear circle, and then your rings out that. And I have rings that I don't let people get through until I've seen us both go. It's got, trust isn't given, it's earned type thing, like you don't know
Hey,
the
this month,
yeah.
this month, no one's going to get a paycheck. Or this month, there's 10 of us. This month, 5 of us are going to get a paycheck. And look, this happens. Like, and even if we catch it up next month in business, I mean, the reality is sometimes the cash flow or the whatever it is, there's this gap. And who I want to work with is the person who can, with the fortitude of their own soul, bridge that gap somehow and
Mhm.
say, okay, I'm not going to take it now. I'll take it when we catch it up. I'll wait for the next bus
Mhm.
cycle. And I'll tell you, man, because I've had a couple businesses completely collapse. Some not my fault, some completely my fault, especially in the beginning, the first couple times. But your phone stops ringing fast, man. When that money runs out, when there's not that easy pay that everybody's like, yeah, we're killing it, and all of a sudden you're not killing it, and all of a sudden it's like, oh man, we're not just not killing it, it's killing us. It is amazing how your text message threads will go from like 100 a day to like 2. It's just
Yeah,
like your wife.
come on, right.
Also, your kids still want money. It doesn't matter how bad off things are. You'll get
Yeah.
those texts also.
How many
I
kids
know this
asking for
stuff.
money? I love that. I love that. I love that. So what would you recommend to someone who's either starting out or struggling, who's going through that right now?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to understand that that's part of the game. right? Like you don't, I like a lot of sports analogies. You're not going to win the championship and no one's ever scored against you. Never, you're not going to build a successful business that never has a problem. In fact, the successful business is the one that navigates the failure.
Right.
Right.
Ooh.
I mean, the failure is not, I mean, I think most people think that failure is the opposite of success. Like if I say success, they'll say failure is the, if we're playing the opposites game. But honestly, failure is the building brick of success. I mean, if you think about it, at one point in your life, you learned how to walk, right? Like you didn't know how to walk and then you did. Well, how did you learn? You failed and failed and failed. Right. I remember my little girl, my oldest, poor Hunter. I'm sorry in advance for this story because it's true. She was trying to figure out how to walk, right? I'm in the living room, I'm sitting there on the couch, and she's close. Like she could hold the table, she could kind of scoot to the side. And I'm watching her. And so she would take this bridge, like she would try to go from the table to the recliner, and she would fall, like she would do it wrong. And so when she fell, I was right there sitting on the couch. So I would catch her. And then I would catch her, and pretty soon what I noticed is when she let go of the table, she was actually falling on purpose, like because I was catching her.
Cheers.
So because I was catching her, I was teaching her that the way to navigate the situation was just fall and someone catches you. So of course, dad being the dad that I am, I'm like, oh man, I'm hurting her, right? I'm hurting her. I shouldn't do this. Fortunately for Hunter, sorry, Hunter, we had built up like a 5 or 6 pattern, 5 or 6 time pattern. So the next time I'm like, okay, I'm not going to help her. Let's see how she does. Right. So of course she gets there, she steps off, she does the fall thing, but now dad doesn't catch her, which has her head hit the couch, ricochet off the couch, right onto the coffee table. And then somehow she slides down, bouncing her head the whole way down, cries. I hug her. I went from like I'm going to teach her something to I think I'm the world's worst
Your
dad. I mean, she
dad,
wasn't
yeah.
bleeding or anything, but yeah, I'm like, oh my God, I did that. Like I think I just did that to her. Here's the crazy thing though. She stops crying. She stands up. She goes around. She scoots around the table, and then she lets go of the table and stands there and takes one step. Now she doesn't make it to the recliner, but guess what? She never fell again that way,
Yeah.
right? Because that failure taught her, oh, that's not the way to do this,
Yeah.
right? And so I really think that in business, it's really win or learn, not win or lose, if you want it to be. So it can be win or lose. When does a business end? When the owner quits, or owners collectively. But let's just say, like, if you're a single founder CEO, businesses end when you quit. That's it. Like businesses can run out of money 5 times in a day. You know what I mean? If businesses can go totally bankrupt, have no money for a year, find a way and resurrect. But it ends when you quit. So it's really not win or lose. Like lose is quitting. You can win and then
Yep.
learn what not to do, right? I mean, Amazon figured out that being a bookstore was cool, but ultimately not the real game.
Right.
But if they were never a bookstore, so this is where people miss the boat. If they were never a bookstore, they couldn't have learned all the shit they learned to make them the powerhouse that they are.
Yeah.
People would be like, "Oh, that's silly. They thought they were a bookstore." No, bookstore was the vehicle that taught them all the lessons that allowed them to be this power retail person that they are now.
And that's how evolution works. If you're going to evolve, you have to be such a good chicken that you become more than a chicken. So you got to be the thing first. And I really value that, what you're saying there, because I think that's sort of the process. And in martial arts, we always said people would go compete, and they would expect to rise to their levels of their hopes and aspirations. But the truth is, you fall to the level of your training. And I think that,
Totally.
I see diagrams for marketing funnels, and they just show like this funnel, and everyone's seen it: big at the top, smaller in the middle, small, tiny at the bottom. And it's just like, oh, just people just fall in. They just fall in and they could fall down. And I'm like, that thing should be upside down. It's a pyramid. You have to push people up, and you gotta,
Especially at the beginning until you're really
right?
cool.
You
Yeah.
stop. I mean, any successful business I've seen, there's someone behind the scenes working like a madman to fire the flame, the fire. Yeah, to fan the flames. So
Well, and I think also, it's you, think about every business plan or idea or projection set you've ever seen in your life, right? It's funny how
yeah,
after 5 years, 98% of businesses fail, but I've never seen someone project anything but up.
yeah, that's
Like
right.
like 100% of the business plans are like, here's how we're going to go,
Yeah,
usually linearly 45-degree up, never go down, and it's just funny. It's like, what's funny is for me, when I became a full-time coach, I was at the time I was running a a full marketing agency. And I realized that really I was a coach. Like I liked marketing because I could communicate well. And my marketing clients needed what? Coaching, right?
Mhm.
So at a point, I realized, okay, I'm really just coaching through marketing. So I'm going to go be a coach. But that's a big transition from running an agency to being a full-time coach. And I remember telling my wife what was going to happen. I'm like, look, I can't keep being an agency and be a full-time coach. I'm gonna
Mm,
have to jump. Like I can't hang on to this ledge. This is another takeaway for if you're a CEO or a
mm,
founder or you can't hang on to the ledge and fly. Right. If it's
mm,
time to fly, it's time to fly. You got to let go. And if you're flying, it's true. Flying is super rewarding and it can be very, very unforgiving. But you definitely can't fly while you're hanging on to the ledge. And I realized that like I would coach a little bit and then I would go do some projects in the agencies because I was afraid. I was like, oh crap, if I let the agency die, how am I going to get paid? Because this is what's paying for, my life. And eventually I realized, no, that's hurting. Like I'm not fully committed. People don't know who I am anymore. They don't know if I do marketing or if I'm a coach. And I remember telling my wife it was the most realistic business plan ever. I really wasn't pitching to anyone but her because it was our personal finances. But I said, look, we're going to sell the house. We're going to go all in on this. We're going to move to California where the big opportunity was. It's going to be an amazing adventure. I think that our finances are going to start really high, but in order to do this right, I'm going to have to point the plane 100% at the ground. Like the only way that this works is I've got to do. I literally coached for a top line. I mean, just a top shelf, very high dollar coaching company who wasn't hiring coaches. I coached for free for 18 months. I paid for myself to go there. I paid for my own hotels because it was the only way in. And I saw it. I saw that they were never going to hire, but if I could just show them, then maybe there would be a position, which is what happened. But I told her, I'm like, look, it's going to feel like we're just absolutely going to die. And I said, I think if things happen like I think, this is going to pull up and we're going to end up way higher than we started, which is exactly what happened, right? But I'll tell you the advantage of actually telling the real story, which is the up and down, was when shit got weird when it first started and I'm working for free. I mean, think about you work all in 20-hour days for 4 days, twice a week, and then a regular, 40, 50-hour week, everything else for $0. You're actually paying to be there, right?
yeah.
You're paying California rent to be there. It gets scary. The money goes really
Oh
fast.
yeah, it goes fast.
When it got scary, it was cool because I had been realistic of like, hey, this is going to go up and down and it's going to really go down fast at the beginning. And here's how you'll know it's working is money will start to come in. And so I think as an entrepreneur, man, I'm not saying bring the bank the losing all the money for 6 months proposal or anything, but I think realistically you have to look at like there's gonna be burn.
Mhm.
There is, and you're gonna have that energetically, you're gonna have that monetarily, you're gonna have that, in every way, like relationally within the team, there's gonna be ups and downs. So don't just plan for the ups. It's how you weather those downs that says who you are as a CEO and founder. And here's the deal, man, you wanted those letters behind your name, right? You,
Mm,
CEO. And CEO says, I'm going to make all the hard decisions and I'm going to be on the line and it's going to be my fault even when it wasn't and it's going to be my fault, it's going to be my win even if it wasn't too maybe. But, as a CEO founder, the company's not going to rise past you individually. I mean,
mm.
just it just it really can't.
I think that's really powerful to talk about because entrepreneurs are
Or
really
we
like
or we'd never start anything, man. Like, why else would you start something that 95% of the time tanks?
That's right. That's what I love that quote. It says, "Don't expect others to understand your grind when God didn't give them your vision." Right? Whether you're religious or not, it's you get a fire inside. You have a vision. You've got a passion, a burning desire, your midnight dream, and you're out to see it and succeed at it. And you have to be all in. I got similar advice. In my early days, guys, I was starting at a martial arts school, and he said, if you do this full time, if you put full time hours into it, you'll make it. Just don't give up. But if you try and do this part time, you're never going to get anywhere. And that was the advice that he got is that you really got to commit. And like you said, it takes that leap. And that's the scary part. That's why people just go get a career and then they go get a job because there's a clear path. Others have done it before. But the downside to it is that if a university can train 100 people to do what you do or 1,000 people to do what you do, you're a commodity. What you're doing is commodity. As in a business, it's a very dynamic thing. And every business has to constantly innovate to maintain relevancy. And so that's, it's almost a different mindset to it. A buddy and I, we used to have a rule, roof and ramen. As long as we've got roof a roof over our head and enough money for hot noodles, it's all a game after that, right? And now that I'm older with kids and stuff, it's a little bit more pressure.
It's just more roof and more ramen if you really think about it. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, like because I have 5 kids, it's just a lot more roof and a lot more ramen, and sometimes multiple roofs and multiple deliveries of ramen. But at the end of the day, right? I think that's pretty good. Roof and ramen. I never heard that, but I mean, roof and ramen is how I got through college, so I'm all in.
Yeah. So you got it right away. You're like, hey, that's how you do it, and you have to have a vision and something you're out to do, and it has to be about more than just the money. Was it the path to $1 million is consistently selling a specific solution to a specific problem experienced by a specific type of person. So you have to be
Yeah,
passionate about something.
you said something there that I think is so worth pausing on for a second. It's like it has to be more than about the money, right? 100%. Like because if you're gonna make it through, like I mean, I'm light in the night. I wake the sleeping giants. Like that's the purpose of my life. It's what I've always done. It's who I'll always be. It's what I've done with my family. It's what I've done with myself. It's what I've done with my wife. It's what I've done with my kids. Like that's it. I'm light in the night. I wake the sleeping giants. That's who I am, right? And that keeps me going when the money's not there, when the hard times come. But I have learned this in very many painful ways. It also is about the money. So it's not just about the money, but I think a lot of people say that because they're not making the money. Nothing's
Mm,
coming in like, oh, it's not just about the money. But yeah, it is not just about the money, but it is about the money because the purpose of business is the exchange of value that boils down to money. Like if you're volunteering in a church, great, you can have a lot of purpose there, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's awesome. I've done it, right? I've given years of my life to missionary service and things like that. But business is about the money. It can't just be about the money, or you're going to have a big problem. But man, don't forget, it's business, therefore
yeah.
it's about money. I see a lot of founders like I'm in this for the purpose. I'm not gonna touch any money. I'm not gonna pull anything. I'm like, man, I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I just don't. If you're getting no benefit from it, it's not a business,
Yeah.
or at least if the business. I mean, I understand for a period of time, to give air to the engines and all. Cool, I understand, like for a period of time, but like remember, in business and life, seasons end, right? So if you're doing
Mm,
something for a season, then it ends, and if you don't see the end, that's not a season. Right. And
mm,
so people are like, oh, this is just a tough season. Okay, cool. Then when does it end? How do
mm.
you affect that, or how do you weather it until, right? So, like I said, I've been in category 5 hurricanes. They end. I mean, it sucks, but like, hey, tomorrow, next
Yeah,
day,
that's
this thing's passed and it ends. And so I think sometimes too, entrepreneurs put themselves in a losing state. They convince themselves that
the
it's a
mentality, the
season.
loser. It's the loser mentality. Yeah, I get
Yeah.
what you're saying. I get what you're
they're
saying.
they're in a permanent state of this is never going to get better, and they tell themselves that this is a season. But I always remind myself, hey, if this is a season, then when does it end? Like maybe I just had a heart attack and I'm in the hospital, right? So how does this end? Then I get whatever surgery, I get out, and then like I can see that if it's a season.
Mhm.
And I just think not enough people put like they use it's not just about the money to pretend like it's not about the money. You're in business, it's about the money.
Yeah. Well, I think what's really important is that's how you keep score. I think so, and that's also how you judge how effective things are. Because when you do deals with friends and barter and that sort of thing, you kind of don't complain if you don't get what you want. But when you pay money, first off, people put their money where their mouth is. Put your money where your mouth is. They back up. They really want it. This was Glenn Livingston used to be kind of like a market research guru. Now he works with emotional eaters, but back in the day, he used to be hired by all these Fortune 500 companies and help find. He entered 17 niches profitably at the same time by himself. And he said one of these times he was doing a focus group for like a Fortune 500 company. And, they were there for the hour and they did all this stuff. And at the end, he's like, oh, so Michelle's here. She got everyone's checks. Thank you for coming, doing this focus group. Really appreciate it. By the way, I meant to speak to the product manager. Good news, you can actually take one of the products home with you today. Just grab whichever one you want on your way out the door. Everything else was a setup for that. Because
Exactly.
everything people were saying, all their opinions, it was all just the setup for, by the way, when you leave, you can take the one that you actually want. And when people took the one they wanted, they went and looked back at everything that they had said about that product, right? And it was just a big setup. So I think that's part of where, when you say it's about the money, I think like for some people, the meaning is I'm not trying to become rich and have a Lamborghini and I don't need 7 yachts and a little St. James Island.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
three odds plenty. That's you do want to live comfortably and you do want to know people value what you got. And in that sense, it has to be about the money because it's the only real true, it's the truth. People will pay you lip service all day.
Go ask all your friends if they'll buy your new album, and every one of your friends, because they're your friends, like, yeah, man. Now bring 10 albums to your next get together and tell them they're $30 a piece and see who buys them. And that second thing is business. That first thing is friendship. And again, it's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with friendship. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Like I don't mind my, my friends telling me nice things about myself. But business is about the actual creation of value. Can I sing a song and people might
Good.
like it? Maybe. Can I sing a song well enough that people will give me money to hear it in their life?
Yes.
Yeah, no. I mean, not now, not, not who I currently am and not in the voice that I have. So that's cool. So thank God there's people, that do that.
Yeah,
And
do
because
that.
I
Yeah.
pay them money too, just like you do. Because I want that sound in my
Yeah.
house. And that is worth my effort. Like whatever it is that I blood, sweat, and whatever I bled and sweated to create, I'm willing to give a little bit of that to have that sound in my life.
Yeah.
Right. Because
Yeah.
it makes my life better. Gives me value. And that's when you say money's the score, I think also because you're 100% right. But I think people hear that as like, oh, it's just a number, and the higher it is, the better you are. No, 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 no. That's how you know you created real value in people's lives.
Mm,
If you're a coach and people give you $100 to sit with you for 2 hours, awesome, that's cool. What if they give you 50 grand to work with you for a year? There's a different expectation of value there, right? I
mm,
mean, I've done both of those things. And the thing is, it takes a while for people to trust that you're going to do something with that money and that their life is going to have to be, if someone's going to hand me 50 grand to coach them, they must believe they can make 500 or a million because I'm definitely going to be a 10-to-1 return at least. At
yeah.
least
Yeah.
I'd feel terrible if it was a 2-to-1 return.
Right. Right. And that's ultimately, and I think part of this gets back to the bedrock of Western civilization. I mean, even China had to adopt capitalistic principles in order to be able to compete on an international stage. And that comes down to, you can be a socialist with your kids and with your close relatives, perhaps. But when it comes to how do you interact with the world outside, there needs to be some sort of fair value exchange, and that's where kind of price signals and the marketplace comes in, right? Jim Rohn does a great talk about this. Your brother Bob, is he a valuable member of the church, a valuable member of the community? Of course. A valuable member of the family? Of course. But is he valued by the marketplace? And unfortunately, it's like a television or a YouTube ad. You get 5 seconds to click away. Like the marketplace is harsh. Greg Glassman, the founder of CrossFit, had this great talk. He talked about markets are unknown and unknowable. If I asked you, now I'm paraphrasing, if I asked you how many people are in market today for a car, you might be able to look at keyword searches and foot traffic, but the real number is unknown, unknowable, and that's constantly in flux. But everyone can acknowledge and recognize excellence. And excellence should be your North Star. And how you measure if it's excellence or not is if it's excellent and it makes money.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. And I'll tell you, most people, socialists, I don't know, but most people are straight up communists at their kitchen table, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
If you haven't read the Communist Manifesto and you're a capitalist, you're missing out. Go read it. It's a really cool way to run your house. It's a terrible way, in my opinion, to run a country based on what's happened historically, right?
Right.
Like I haven't seen anybody pull it off very well.
Yeah.
But at my table, it's what it is. Do we sit down at dinner and we're like, hey, who merited the biggest steak? No.
Yeah.
It's not like that at all. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, we have 5 kids. Awesome. Here's what dad and mom brought in. Let's divvy it to everyone. And
Yeah.
hey, Liam needs a little more today because he's super hungry because he didn't eat lunch. Awesome. We'll all give him a little more.
Yeah.
That's great. And when you can totally fully trust someone, awesome, that works.
Yeah.
When you get out to the larger economy. But hey, that's another thing is like go really get into there's these ideologies that we may completely disagree with or think are wrong or can't produce results. Cool, but study those. Interesting. People had those ideas for a reason, and you can start to see where they are useful, where they aren't useful. Like it's not like entire countries are run by this because it just doesn't do anything and because it just has no appeal whatsoever and there's no sense to it. There is some sense to it. So figure what that is. And that helps you to see what you are. I think we're kind of losing that right now in the world. We're like,
Well, we
we're
are
just on
because,
teams.
well,
I'm this team and you're that team, and I don't want to talk to you.
well, and I'm unfortunately putting something out there, but I'm gonna say it anyhow. Like I've got live how you want to live, right? What people do behind closed doors is their own business. In my hometown, friends of mine, their kid was in school, the kid's in like grade 7, and they have like a Pride Month. And I can't help but think that there's either serious incompetence behind that or malevolent intent. And the reason is because we have a Mother's Day. We have a Father's Day. Our countries have an Independence Day. Or we have a family day. So, okay, you're going to do a whole month for Pride. Where's Engineering Month? Where's Sports and Physical Fitness and Health Month? Where's Financial Planning Month? Like, where's how to have healthy relationships month? But the society's been pointed in these weird directions. And I don't know if it's just, the Chinese, they say the Chinese, I've heard the Chinese have a saying, you can't keep wealth past 3 generations because the first one struggles and earns it. The second one saw their parents grind, respects it, preserves it. The third one's so far removed from the principles that of reality and it squanders it. And I feel like that's there. Like, I got nothing against, sure, you want people to be proud? Sure. Have Pride Day. Have Pride Day at school. Cool. A whole month in grade 7? Like, how does this fit into preparing the child to navigate the future in the world? Like, that's just a weird.
Well, everything has turned to politics. Like it's kind of interesting to see. Like politics are like the new pop culture, I think. Like it's like the new thing. It's the new thing that, we used to talk about what Princess Diana was wearing or who shot JR on the Dallas show or, we used to have these things that unified us. And right now it's like, and it's really interesting because with social, again, it seems to polarize because I think that's what gets attention. Right. And this
Yes.
is an important
Yes.
thing. So you can't, I think it was Dave Chappelle was talking about how if you're going to be an internet celebrity, you have to polarize. You have to be negative in a certain way because
Right.
if you're not, no one pays attention. Like
Yeah.
unless you say some big negative thing, no one really pays attention. And
Yeah.
so what that does though is then it's like, well, you pick a side on that thing. In Les Miserables, there's a passage about the guillotine. And he says that the power of the guillotine is that you cannot remain neutral. When you see it, you have an
Yeah.
immediate reaction. You either love it or you hate it. You think, oh, that's a great tool of justice, or you think this is an atrocity, right? Like no one can remain neutral about the guillotine. And that was
Right.
that was its power by putting it up in the downtown. It sent the message to everyone, right? And I think social media kind of does that over and over and over. Puts these guillotines where like, oh wow, how this is outrageous, right? But it's kind of funny that we're still falling for it because I mean, how long has Facebook been around?
Yeah. I
A
know.
long ass time, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, how many literal maybe millions, but I'll go ahead and say at least 20,000 times I've been outraged by whatever outrageous thing. And it's like, well, wait, if I can be outraged 20,000 times and not much has changed, was there really something to be outraged about, or was somebody mining my attention? Somebody mining, because here's the thing, attention is way more valuable than you think, right?
Yeah.
Like we have this attention economy. Understand what that is. If I'm mining your attention, watch what happens. From the field of your attention grow your thoughts. From the field of your thoughts grow your beliefs.
Mhm.
From the field of your beliefs, grow your choices and actions.
Mhm.
Your choices and actions, in sum total, are your life. Like
Yes.
your
100%.
entire life, if you're an adult, right? If you're a kid, this isn't true. If you're an adult, your life is your choices and actions. So if someone is mining my attention
Yep.
or I'm handing it over, then I am giving them control, quite literally, of my life. Like when you
Yeah.
pay attention, that's why it's called pay attention. You're paying it, but what are you paying? You're spending your life.
Yes. Yes. And
and,
your life is the
and
sum total of decisions you've made or not made.
Right. And if I think when Facebook first started and a lot of the social, I'm not picking on Facebook. I mean, I use it just like anyone else. I did take like a 6-year break, 5 years, no posts, because I realized like, wait a second, this used to be, hey, here's the last post anybody you like made. And it was all just like a big in time thread. Cool. But then now we get algorithms, we get AI. So now it's not that they're showing me the last thing my friends did. They're like, oh, we're going to show him James's post with a dog and Audrey's post with a dog and then Brian's post with a dog, and then a dog food ad with his kind of dog in it. And so the posts I'm seeing are actually to get my attention on something that I might buy. But
Yeah.
look, I'm an entrepreneur, so we're all that invisible hand, but there's that invisible advertiser hand.
Yeah.
And so there's this manipulation that's happening, and it's cool. Like it's fine if that's what you want. But for me, like my attention is so precious because that is what drives everything else in my life.
100%.
I mean, you've had a new baby, right? Like when you have a new baby, that is a tidal
Yeah.
wave of attention. Like you
You
can
can't.
only think about the next hour or two. Like it's just so no one can believe how many details a baby comes with, right? That
Yeah.
and so, but with all that attention comes what? Comes those thoughts, comes those beliefs, comes that love, comes that like it creates who you are as a father or a mother.
Mm.
Right. And but think about if you're waking up every day and just handing the algorithm, like you sit on the toilet and
Yeah.
you fall
Yeah.
asleep for a half hour with the algorithm, Well, then that doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means someone else is giving the attention. Like someone else is setting up the prompts for your life. Like
I found a
we think we're
study
setting up.
online and then it disappeared and I could never find it again, but it talked about it talked about testing drive-in movie theaters to create, called it mass man, that they would use the drive-in theater and they would, at the theater, people would be presented with something. And anytime you get a group of people together and you present something to them, you're going to create predictable categories of people because people are going to walk away, disillusioned, or they're going to have this opinion. Like you said, you're going to put the guillotine in the middle of the town square, and immediately you're going to have two groups of people. And it's almost like, for the people that are really savvy, was it problem, reaction, solution? You present something, people react, and then there's the product for sale. Like the gold rush, the people that made money were the ones selling axes or pickaxes, right?
Exactly.
So the idea that our attention can be used to manipulate us into making purchases and to making decisions. Funny you mentioned Facebook. CIA had a project forever called Lifebook that they were working on, where they wanted to categorize have a way to have a portfolio of someone's entire life. And the project was wrapped up and ended. And the date it was ended was the date Facebook was founded. You can go check out Facebook's page and see that. Just very interesting fact there. So Lifebook ended. It was like February, whatever year. But I looked it up. I put the screenshots up. I didn't believe it myself. Anyhow, I digress. So let's talk.
No, and hey, if it wasn't for that social media, you and I wouldn't be talking right now. We wouldn't know each other.
100%.
So there's a ton of benefits, but the question is, are you doing it on purpose, right? So the main thing is, you're doing this intentionally or not, right? Like an hour wasted that brings you joy was not wasted, right? And then so it has to do with the intention. Are you intentionally saying, hey, I'm gonna take a little ride on socials? Cool. Like, all right, or I'm gonna use this for my ends, and if I see something great. Cool. I mean, and the truth is, some of those ads were exactly what I needed right then. You know what I mean? Whether Alexa was listening or not, hey, that's what I needed. I was just talking about needing this. Here's the ad. Great. This makes my life better.
Just call that a wiretap. Now it's, hey, wiretap, can you order me some milk? So, so what are some of the other? We're talking about some of the behaviors. What can you dial in on some of the skills and behaviors that you think are important for people to develop, especially as we walk into this a little chaotic future we're headed towards?
Yeah, I would say, and this is going to sound a little esoteric, but I think it's important. If I was an entrepreneur today, there's two things that I would there's two axes that I would cut a certain way. I would stop worrying about intensity and I would start worrying about consistency, right? Consistency is greater than intensity, because what you can do consistently is what really matters, right? Why was Bruce Lee such a great martial artist? Because he could always do what he wanted when he wanted. Not because he did that one awesome thing for a long time one time, but because anytime. But that requires a ton of effort, a ton of mastery, a ton of training, right? So that doesn't mean intensity doesn't matter. But what matters in your life more than the intensity you can go is what intensity can you keep with consistency. So really starting with, hey, what can I do? And then continuing to do that again and again, and then expanding that. Most people do the opposite. They're like, oh, I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to stop eating all sugar. I'm never going to eat carbs. I'm going to only eat 500 calories a day, and I'm going to work out 2 hours a day, right? And they look, people, they'll hold on to it for like 2 days, a week, a month, right? But eventually it was too much intensity for their capacity to be consistent. Where if they just were real and were like, hey, I'm going to lower calories by 10% and I'm going to up output by 20%. Do that for a month and then do it again. And then do that for a month and then do it again. What ends up happening is that consistent person just slays. Like they just slay. Like if you do something, if you read a book for 20 minutes a day, right, over the course of a month, that's a lot of reading. And look, this is how life actually grows too. Side note, like if you want to be efficient as an entrepreneur, and this is not the dumbest thing anybody's ever said, although it's pretty close. Hey, I got a plan for you guys. Work out for 8 hours on Saturday, then you're good for the week. And then just grind. But that's not how life works. It's not how your body works, right? Your body needs consistent input, consistent output. You can see that in nature. It's not like the lion that wins is not the lion that killed the biggest wildebeest. It's the one that can kill a wildebeest every day, even if it's the most sickly wildebeest. As long as it's consistently doing it, it's going to win. So I think first favor consistency over intensity. And it's cool. Like it's cool to want. So you hear this all the time, now it seems to be a billion. I don't know like what happened, but like we we kind of flipped in this generation from being a millionaire to being a billionaire.
They printed so
Which is
much money.
there's such a massive difference between million and billion. I don't think people understand. Like, you get 1,000,000 seconds every 12 days, right? Every 12 days, you lived 1,000,000 seconds. And if I ask you right now, if you're listening to this, how often do you get 1,000,000,000 seconds? So think about it. Try to calculate that in your life. Don't use a computer. Don't use your calculator.
Or be
How often? If you get a million,
1,000.
yeah. So
Yeah.
12,000. Guess how long that is? 31 and a half years.
Yeah. That's,
You get 1,000,000 seconds every 12 days. You get 1,000,000,000 seconds, maybe 3 times if you live to be like 96 or 93. So
wow.
like not everybody gets 1,000,000,000 seconds 3 times. Most of us get it once, maybe twice. That's a huge difference from every 12 days to twice in a lifetime.
Yeah. Yes.
And so when we say million, a billion, it's not like saying like 10,000 to 12,000, but we're kind of like casually we say it that way, right? But let's say you do want to be a billionaire, and lots of people do it, so it's not impossible. If anybody did it, you can do it. But if you've never made $10,000, your first target should probably not be a billion. Like, let's be honest, right? If you've never made 10 grand, cool, make 10 grand. And then once you've done that, make 50. Once you've made 50, make 100. Once you make 100, make 250, 250. Hey, at 250, you really want to stretch to a million, cool, but you're probably better off stretching to 500, right? And once you know 500, you know a million. And then and so on, right? And from a million, you can go to 2, 2 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 50. It starts to get bigger, 50 to 100, 100 to a billion. That is, I've coached thousands and thousands and thousands, over 40,000 people, almost all of whom were entrepreneurs. That is the progression, right? It's 100K, 250, 500, 1 million, from 1 to 2, from 2 to 5. You see the 5 guys figure out 10. Now 5 to 10 and 10 to 50, way different games. You can brute force 1, 2 million. You cannot brute force 5, 10 million, right? From 10 guys will jump to 50. Because why? Because they figure out how to stop doing it all themselves. They figure out how to have other people do shit, right? And then from 50, they'll go to 100. And from 100, now, if you're making 100 million, you're in striking of a billion, because it's just a few different things.
Yeah.
Right. But the key is, if you want to make a billion, you got to touch those steps. There's no skip it. There's no shortcut. Why? Because whoever would give you the shortcut wouldn't do that. Yeah. It's like, I could just ask Facebook to send me some ads that make me a billionaire. Well, they would just do it for themselves if it was like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're billionaires because a lot of people try to skip steps. And so they're spending all this money thinking they can go from 0 to a billion, when really you need to focus on the next rung.
What I love about that is it's sort of a process analogy. And most things, people, whether they realize or not, all happen through process. And so you're talking about, instead of going from 0 to a billion, go 0 to 100K, K to 250K. Because what you have to do is first always figure out the processes. You're saying consistency. But, you made me think, when I was a kid, I loved this movie Groundhog Day. This guy wakes up and he's kind of a snarky character. And he goes to this town for Groundhog Day, and he wakes up the next day and he's starting Groundhog Day again. And he's trapped in this time loop. And he's just kind of a, shitty person. And not to spoil the movie or anything, but he's basically stuck in that day until he's done everything he could do. And he just decides, if this is where I'm going to be for the rest of eternity, I want to make it as heavenly as possible. I'm just using simple words to describe it. So he decides now to become a good person and make every day the best day it can be. And eventually one day he wakes up and sees the next day. And so that got me thinking about, if I had to live the same 24-hour day for 80 years, what would that day have to look like, where I get all the things that I want to have done, and I love who I've become at the end of that journey. And that's kind of like almost what you're talking about now. Like, first, if you're going 0 to 6 figures, like, what do you need to be doing every day to make that happen? And then you're not going to it's not going to radically change. If it does, congrats. But you have to have that process. It's like saying, I want a garden bed, and I want 100 carrots out there, and I want them all to be award-winning giant carrots. Well, first you got to plant a carrot, and then you got to plant a few carrots, and then you got to harvest consistently, and then you got to figure out how to tweak the fertilizer, and then you got to figure out, what seeds work better than others. There's a process to it. And I think that's why what you're saying is that consistency is greater than intensity. I think that's a really powerful lesson.
There was a time for everyone listening when you couldn't even manage to not use the bathroom on yourself. Like, you were a baby and you just went. When you had to pee, you peed. When you had to poo, you pooed. Whatever, it didn't matter, right? Now you grew out of that, but you didn't grow out of that. You learned out of that. You learned your way out. And it's kind of funny, because nobody looks at an infant and they're like, what an idiot. They just poo on themselves. They don't even know how to use the toilet. No one, they're like, Yeah, we got to figure this out, and then we got to potty train them, and then we got, and it's the same for making money. It's the same for getting in shape. It's the same progression. And I think so. The consistency over intensity brings me to the other one, which I would say is uh, acceptance over actualization. So people are really want to be self-actualized and really make a big change, right? Or even self-aware. You can even say awareness. I want to be very self-aware, but honestly, what if you just accepted who and where you really are? Like that acceptance is what lets you see reality. When you see really big business owners, right? I met the guy who started Lowe's one time, and one of the things he said one time was, building something this big is actually kind of boring because you figure it out, and then you figure out how to do it again, and then you figure out it's going to work 100 times, but then you do it 1,000 times. It's like, what's the last thing you did 1,000 times that was interesting?
Mm,
But he accepted that this is the model that works, and so I have to repeat this in more or less the same form in a lot of places, right? And so if you can accept where you really are, and then accept, and this is hard sometimes, where you really want to go, well, now you can plot a course and walk that course, right? If you're
mm,
always trying to self-actualize, which is the magic, this is the magic bean of I'm going to make $1 billion next year, even though I've never made 20 grand. Why? I'm gonna just find it inside of my. You're not. Like you're not. Just accept where you are. If you've only ever made $100, cool. Let's shoot for 1,000. You could
mm,
do that. If you've only ever made 1,000, shoot for 10. That's a 10x increase, right? I
mm,
get compared to the richest guys in the world, $10,000 is nothing, but compared to what you've ever made, it's 10x. And then if you just
mm.
keep doing that, guess what? You end up being one of the most rich guys in the world. But
Yes.
they didn't skip steps. Like they
Yep.
didn't, everybody wants to own SpaceX, but nobody wants to sleep on the factory floor,
Yeah.
for months, right?
Yeah.
Like,
For 3 years. I think it was 3 years he slept on the factory floor.
and I don't want to do that, and that's probably why I'll never have something like that. And I'm okay with that. Like that's fine with me, right? But just see that there is, if you can get consistency over intensity and then move to acceptance, because acceptance over actualization is like we're going to move the numbers, we're going to
Mm.
sell 100 units, and then acceptance
Yes.
is nobody wants this product in its current form.
Yes.
Why? And then go at again, if you the example you gave of the focus group,
Yeah.
and the whole focus group was just to see what they would take on the way out, right? Why he accepted the fact that all that mattered was what people took at the end. And if you can accept reality, man, you are going to fly. I remember learning jujitsu, and I'm a big guy, right? So you can't really tell probably on the camera, but I'm 6'4", 310 pounds, right? And I went to jujitsu, and I've always been told, be careful, don't hurt people. And so one of the first days of jujitsu, I'm with a guy who's like 5'7", maybe 180 pounds, right? So I mean, that's a big difference. And so as I'm laying on him, I'm kind of being nice. And I remember
Yeah.
my coach coming over, and he's like, "Hey, man, this guy's way better than you. You don't know anything you're doing, and you're being nice to him." He's like, "You know what your only advantage is? You're big. Why the hell aren't you laying on him?" Like
Yeah.
you should be you're like who you are. You're low skill and really big and strong. So why aren't you just using the one thing you can do right now?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I don't want to be mean. He's like, you don't want to be mean. You're fighting to the death with this guy. What do you mean don't want to be mean, right? Like, why are you not using your one advantage? And so what was that? That wasn't actualization, right? That was accepting. He's like, hey, accept where you are and who you are,
You
and this
are.
is
Yeah.
the one thing you got. Try that. Of course I'm going to progress. Of course later I'll have, eventually I had skills, at least
Yeah.
some, right? But that was cool to me. It's like, hey, accept who you are and play that game.
Yeah.
Don't try to play that other game. Like I'm never gonna play the little guy who's fast game because that's just
Yeah.
not what I am.
I love that. I think that's well said. So, what are some of the biggest mistakes? I know I want to be respectful of your time. I think we're almost over, but
Yeah,
what are
yeah, I'm good.
what are some of the biggest mistakes? You talk about having talked to tens of thousands of entrepreneurs. Are there default categories people tend to fall into?
This is gonna sound really dumb, but it's really true. First, pretending to want something that you don't want, like not knowing why you want something, just like accepting somebody else's formula, basically. Like I want to do like this billionaire kind of thing that's happening right now, right? So I would say the number one mistake for people is not really honestly admitting where they are, combined with not really honestly admitting what they want. You know, there's a group of guys out there, right? And they're younger typically, but not all, right? That like, I want to make a ton of money because that lets me buy really cool motorbikes and that will attract women. And that's it. Like, I mean, I can remember back at a time when that seemed like really cool. But they'll never say that because then that sounds dumb and that sounds weak and that sounds. But the truth is, if you could just admit that, you could actually make all of that happen,
Right.
right? But you won't. You'll be like, well, I want to do this to change the world, and then they have to put so much effort into the facade of what they're pretending to do that there's
Right.
really no time for the thing they're really doing.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think for most people, what's a coach really? And the word coach comes from what? A horse-drawn carriage. And I actually think it's the best. I think it's the best definition for what a great coach is. Why? It's a guy who comes alongside of you because you have a need. You're starting here and you want to get there. And so as a coach, it's like, hey, where are we really? And where do we really want to go? And if you can just clear that up, man, there's almost nothing that can stop you. I look
Mm,
again, I keep talking about Musk, but it's just so interesting to see a guy who's like, I want to go to Mars. How crazy is that, right? Like, that's crazy. But guess what? Like, I think his car is either there or it's really well on its way, right? Like, I
yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
my car is never going to be parked on Mars. That's pretty damn cool because he admitted where he really was, right? And if you hear him talk about the early days of SpaceX, where like, if he had to be the head engineer because no one believed in it.
Yeah.
And so that meant he had to blow up extra rocket. Like it had to be it was a worse product because he wasn't the best guy for it, right?
Yeah.
But he admitted where he really was and owned that, and then admits where he really wants to go. And however imperfectly, however, I'm not saying he's good or bad guy, but
Yeah.
in business, it's hard to deny that this guy knows what he's doing. But why? Radical honesty and acceptance of where he really is and where he really wants to go. And
Mm,
any type of pretend, whether that be because you're saying, "Oh, I want to change the whole world," and you're pretending to have these great things when really you just want to get rich, or maybe you really do want to help the world and you're pretending like you want to get rich. Any pretending is going to just hold you back. It's just going to
mm,
put a whole lot of weight that does nothing, and another thing that entrepreneurs do horribly, and it's sad because you walk into like industry groups and everyone just talks about how good they're doing. It's funny, right? Like
yeah.
you go
Yeah.
to a industry meeting and like that everybody's taking a bath, but then everybody, all anyone talks about is how awesome things are. And it's really unfortunate because as an entrepreneur, it means you get the whole boom and bust cycle. We know this if you've ever lived it, but we never talk about the booms. We experience the bust cycle alone, and then the
Mhm.
boom cycle. All our friends are there for dinner, and I wish that more entrepreneurs would, when they're in that bust cycle, call another entrepreneur. Call
Mm,
my friends when it's like, dude. And look, it's irrational, right? Like sometimes, like I can feel like I'm going to make $1 billion at 8 a.m. And at 8:20, I'm 100% sure I'm sleeping under a bridge. I
right.
don't
Right.
know why it's like that. Entrepreneurs don't live in the present, they live in the future. Like we run off to the future, we see what could be, right? And then we come back and we get angry that it's not already here. We're like,
Yeah.
we have this ability to go see what could be. But then when we come back, we're frustrated. What unfortunately that means in like 30 minutes, we could go from being the richest guy ever to the poorest guy ever. And man, when that's happening to you, reach out. Like reach out
Mm,
to someone, reach out to me. I don't care. Like, hey, I get it. Like you're not alone in those moments unless you choose to be alone. Every entrepreneur has been in those cratered moments, right? The only
mm,
guys who haven't been in those moments are liars. They've been
right.
there, they just
Oh, 100%. 100%. 100%.
or
100%.
pretenders who never actually had a business. Those guys don't have those either, but
Kevin, this has been such a great call. I've got a page of notes. I feel like I'm going to go do some thinking after this call as well about my own. Is there anything I haven't asked you I should have asked you about?
I don't know, man. No, I think the other thing that I'll say, and this is totally off script. You have no idea I'm about to say this, but I'm going to say it. Man, the greatest business I ever started was every one of my 5 kids. If you have the chance to be a parent and live that out, man,
Yeah.
no better preparation for being an entrepreneur, but nothing that really gives back at that level. If you give it the attention, if you nurture it, if you keep through the hard times,
Yeah.
the most rewarding thing I've ever done, tied with finding my wife and building that relationship forever. But I hear a lot of young people today saying, well, I just don't know if I want to have kids. Man, there's so many great parents who don't have kids right now. I see it. Like you meet people, and you're like, man, there could be this other generation that's like you, but now there's not because you chose this. And hey, ever to each his own. You choose what you want to do. Like
Well, I got
obviously everybody's life
but
is
it's
theirs.
also partially like there's been social engineering at play, and that's part of I think what we're going through is we're trying to purge this. And people, it's a conspiracy theory. Ice Cube, listen, I grew up with hip hop. Ice Cube did an interview in 2020 saying, I think a lot of people would be surprised to learn that a lot of the CEOs of these music labels are actually also part owners of the private prisons, and also some of them are part owners of the porn sites. And so when they look at what sort of artists are they onboarding, what sort of talent, what sort of, they're trying to influence the culture of the kids. And so it's, we have this sort of a thing. I just, not everything in the jungle kills you and eats you. It's almost the idea that you can't say that there's no weeds in the garden. You have to admit that there are bad actors in the world, that not everybody has your best interests out. And that's part of why we need a capitalist environment to deal with the outside strangers aside from our family and our home, is because we need to have some sort of fair exchange. It's the whole reason behind, I think, the Second Amendment, because unless there's mutually assured destruction, the bigger group is typically going to just bully and take what they want from the smaller group. But if you've got a gun and I've got a gun and we're both open carry, we're going to be really civilized with each other, because we all just want to.
If you're my size, there's an invention that should bother you. If you're 6'4", 300 pounds, the thing that got us was the spear, which the gun is the ultimate expression of the spear. But until the spear, we just did whatever we wanted.
Right.
And then with the spear, a little guy could kill us from 50 yards away, and we all have to get along.
Right. That's exactly. But this is exactly what it is. And people, you grew up in your neighborhood, your city, your culture. Like, I got my parents traveling here. Like, until you've traveled the world and really felt culture shocks, it's hard to understand. It's hard to understand the wants, needs, desires of 100,000 other people. And out of a group of 1 million people, there's a percentage that are psychopaths. And so, how do we, I'm on a bit of a sidebar here, but I think at the end of the day, it's about being the best version of yourself and understanding that if you love your culture, if you love your values, if you love your grandparents, you're the tip of the spear for all the ancestors that came before you, all the people that bled, died, all that stuff. They dealt with all that so you could be here today. So you could decide not to have kids. Again, you don't want to make people feel bad for their decision. And in some ways, it's made it harder. We're living in such a competitive era. Before, people would have a farm and they could just whatever. We're just going to live off milk and eggs, But now,
the more kids you had, the more employees you had. My dad, look, this is in my lifetime. My dad used to laugh, and he's like, "We don't hire, we breed. Like we have more kids. Like we're 8th generation. Like, we have to work here." Like he's like, I would say, "Dad, I don't want to cut the grass." He's like, "Well, neither do I. That's why I had you." And he was joking, but there was a time when that was the truth. And I think if there's one other thing that I would say, it's that we are not hopeless drifters in an angry ocean. We can swim, we can paddle, we can build boats. There's a lot that we can do. I am a force of nature. You are a force of nature. 100%. Every single person hearing my voice right now is a force of nature. Now, I'm not the biggest one, not the only one. It doesn't mean there aren't other forces, but hey, don't forget, like you count too. Like when the world pushes, you can push back, or you can just not be pushed,
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that so much. So I think to wrap up, some of your key biggest lessons is to really know what you want and why you want it, and to get to the core of that so you can tap into your inner burning desire that's going to see you through good times and bads. And to also just take a real assessment of where you're at, what your resources are, what you're capable of, and try to have realistic goals and go for some small wins to build momentum. And then from there, momentum, it becomes like we talked about. When things are going well, you got 100 people hitting you up in your DMs, right? And so but when they are going well, it's just your mom and your kids asking for money. So you got to, so build that momentum, build those wins to put some wind in your sails and keep moving forward.
Yeah, failure and success are both liars. The 100 people aren't that into you, and when only one person's calling, there's probably more to care about you. You got to just treat them both as imposters.
I heard that. Success has many fathers, but failure is an orphan, right? Success, everyone's like, I did that, I held that success. Failure, I don't know, wasn't not my kid. No, this is a good call. I think it's worth listening to more than once. And if people want to learn more, if they want to get in touch, Kevin, how do they follow you? Where do they go?
So I'm at It's Coach Kevin pretty much on all of the social medias. Also, I am the COO at Apogee Strong. We have a network of schools, right? We very clearly saw that the school system was failing. This is before all this AI stuff. Now it just has no hope, right? Yeah. And again, the system, not the people in it, a lot of great people in the school system, but the system just was designed for a different era. It was really awesome for the Industrial Revolution, but it is holding people back now. And so we have founded a network of micro schools, and we have a support system for micro schools. So in other words, if you are a micro school, we can support you and help you to thrive, because it's really getting back to that's going to have our kids have the education that matters today. My 9-year-old went from being super miserable about learning times tables to at 11 years old, having his own business, understanding the difference between profit and loss, like he does 3D printing,
Mm,
and telling me at 11 that I want a business that makes profit. It doesn't just drive revenue, which at
yeah.
42, I failed my first company because I didn't understand that lesson, right? Because that's going to serve him the
Mhm.
way that it used to serve me to teach my son how to plant in a field, right? The first pattern humans figured out was the seasons, and so we would pass on how to plant. I'm out now through this new education system with Apogee, and you go to apogeestrong.com. It's giving them the tools to lead and be the people they're meant to be instead of just memorizing facts. Because the truth is, with AI, it knows all the facts. It's read everything that's ever been read.
Yep.
10,000 times. So knowing facts, like knowledge is no longer power. It,
Yeah.
it just really isn't. And we need to equip our kids for that. And that's what we're all about.
I love that. So go check him out. It's Coach Kevin on social media and app. It says apogeestrong.com. It's spelled APO. G is in green. EE. APOGEE strong.com. Go check that out or go find It's Coach Kevin on social media. Kevin, thank you so much for sharing with my audience tonight today. You know, you got your own network of schools, your own followers, your own clients, your own kids, your own grandkids. I thank you for coming and sharing with my audience tonight so we could all do better.
Thank you. Look, thanks for having me. Truly an honor. Appreciate you, man.